Hello. This video is for IXL activity 8.V.16. It is titled Add and Subtract Linear Expressions. The three-character code for this activity is QCY, or Quebec Charlie Yankee. And we've done other activities where we added and subtracted like terms, or as I prefer to call it, combine like terms. And we're going to be combining some like terms here, and this is kind of like an advanced version of the video for combining like terms, or the activity add and subtract like terms. So on the first one here, it says to simplify the expression. Well, remember, simplify means that we have no grouping, that is to say no parentheses, and also any terms that can be combined or added or subtracted from one another are that's done as well. And so on our first one, we notice that all of these are in terms of k, so we can add these together. Also, let's remember that this minus 3 is actually a plus negative 3. We can change the sign and take the opposite of the number following it. So we're actually adding 5 plus 6, which is 11, and then add a negative 3, which is the same as subtracting 3. We would end up with 8. Now, where do I get this 8? That was 5 plus 6 plus negative 3. And I guess you could do this 6 plus negative 3 is 3, and then bring down your 5 and go 5 plus 3 is 8. You could go that way as well, but either way, you're still going to get the answer 8. 8 what? That's right. Don't forget to bring the k along for the ride. 8k. On the next one, we have a constant of 6, and then a 5j and a 7j. So they're both in terms of j. Let's combine those. We have 12j. I always like to do the variable expressions first, and then let's do our constant. We still have a positive 6, so we'll put plus 6 there. So 12j plus 6. Then on the next problems, we have some groupings going on. We've got this group here and this group here. So this is kind of like the addition of what later you will recognize as a binomial. So this is like the addition of binomials, you might say. However, later on, many people might confuse this and think, oh, this is a difficult problem, because they've seen something like this before, where they had 3 plus 2x and 4 minus 3x. And then you had to start doing some stuff like 3 times 4 is 12, and 3 times negative 3 is negative 9, and bring the x along for the ride. That was times that, and then 2x times 4 is going to be a positive 8x, and then 2 times 3, or 2 times negative 3 is negative 6, and x times x is x squared. And then you would take your negative 6x squared, and then we need to combine these two here. Would be a negative x, and then a positive 12. Yeah, I just did a lot of stuff really quick there, and didn't really explain it, and didn't intend to explain it, because note that this is multiplication between these two groupings, right? Multiplication between two groups like this is a little more difficult than addition. Well, you're going to be happy to realize, at least at this point, eventually you'll get to where we have to multiply binomials, but we're not doing that now. So technically, we could just remove the parentheses on this, 4h plus 7 plus 8h plus 1. And we just take the parentheses out and deal with it like we normally would, and that's because this is addition. And over here on the next one, we have addition, and we'll see what if it's subtraction. Does it still work the same? We'll find out whenever we get to that. So I'm going to put together 4h's and 8h's to get 12h's, and put together 7 and the 1 to get 8, plus 8. So 12h plus 8 is pretty much that simple. So we could look at this one here. It's addition, so we go ahead and you could almost just picture that the parentheses weren't even there. So let's put together the 9j and the 5j. That's going to give us 14j. And let's put together the 1 and the 1. It's going to give us plus 2. So 14j plus 2. You're probably guessing whenever I go to the next slide that indeed it is going to have some, actually, is it the next one? Oh, yeah, it's up here. It's a little ways away still. So let's go ahead and, I know why I picked these particular problems. Check this out. Let's first go ahead and think of this as plus -5 and change the sign on the next one also. Make that plus a -9. Hopefully you're getting used to that step by now. And I end up with a 5 and a -5, and everything's addition. So these are opposites. So those cancel each other out because two opposites added together equals 0. And I have a 9 and a -9. So those two cancel each other out. I don't have to add or subtract anything. I just simply realize that the 5s will cancel the 5s, the 9s cancel each other, and I'm left with just the 7y. Now on the next one here, it is decimals. Yippee. So I'm probably going to grab my calculator on this one. And it is the distributive property. We realize that we have some number times this grouping here, so we need to distribute that 9.3 into each of these values here. So I have a positive times a negative, this first one here, whenever I go right here, and I'm multiplying what's outside here times the first term on the inside. So 9.3, so I'll go with, turn on my calculator here, 9.3, and I'm going to multiply that times a negative 1.2, and that's going to give me a negative 11.16. Now I need to do the other one here, where I'm multiplying 9.3 times the 10.3. So positive times positive is going to give me a positive, and 9.3 times 10.3 is going to give me 95.79. And then I'll just bring down my plus 2.7. And hope if you're thinking, Mr. T, the B didn't go along for the ride, you would be correct. This B right here should have been in with that negative 11.16. So it's negative 11.16 B. That B kind of seems to be blending in. It looks like 0.166, but that is a B right here, right? So let's go ahead, and we only have one term of B, so negative 11.16 B. And now I need to combine the 95.79 plus 2.7. Well, that works out real handy because I've already got the 9.25 or 9.79 in there on my calculator. So all I got to do is hit the plus 2.7, and I get 98.49. It's positive plus 98.49. All right. It is good to know how to multiply decimals without a calculator, but please feel free to do so. The object of this activity is to understand how to simplify the expression. On the next one, this is addition of two binomials. So since it's addition, not multiplication, it shouldn't be too terribly difficult. So we can get rid of the parentheses on this one and act like they're not even there. So let's go ahead and combine our terms of Q. Looks good. So let's -9 plus -4. Well, that's two negatives, so I'm adding them together. It's going to get even more negative, so it's a negative 13. 9 plus 4 is 13. And then I have 1 and 7. 1 plus 7 is 8. Oh, 13. I'm getting really bad about forgetting the variable, aren't I? And 1 plus 7 is equal to 8. Negative 13q plus 8. All right. The next one here, remember we talked about what if it's subtraction? Well, remember we can think of subtraction as thinking my handwriting's not the greatest today. I put THO because I was thinking there's an O coming up. Here's the O. Opposite of, right? So we can think of a subtraction sign as the phrase the opposite of. So the opposite of whatever follows. Well, what if we just took the opposite of these? So what have we said? Negative 8v minus 4. And then the opposite of, we're adding, plus the opposite of. Let's change the sign, and then take the opposite of both these. Normally, we would change the sign and then take the opposite of what's after it. Well, what's after it is everything inside the parentheses. So let's change this over to a positive 4v to a negative 4v, and a negative 7 over to a positive 7. So we can kind of use that process there. Now there is another way to look at this, and that is, and either one will work. Whichever one that you choose to use is fine. And put that 4v minus 7 there. And I'll leave it up to you on which way you want to look at it. Either one will work. Remember, we can multiply anything by 1 and we don't change its value. So what if I had a negative 1 right here? Just put a negative 1 in front of the parentheses. So I now realize, or another way to look at it is change the sign and then put a negative sign in front of it. So it's like I'm distributing this negative 1 in. So I would have negative 8v minus 4 plus, and now I'm going to distribute this negative 1 in. Negative times positive is negative. 1 times 4 is 4. And the v goes along for the ride. And then the negative 1 times negative 7 here, distribute that in. Negative times negative is positive. 1 times 7 is 7. And notice that these two expressions here, both these are identical to one another. So whether you want to think of it as the opposite of everything that follows and just change the signs of everything that's on the inside, or if you want to think of it as a 1 being out in front of the parenthesis and then distributing that negative 1 into it. All right, so let's do terms of v, right? So we're going to do our terms of v first. And negative 8 plus negative 4, so they're both negative. It's going to get more negative. We're adding them together. That's negative 12. So negative 12v, and then I have a negative 4. Oh, I guess I should change that to plus and a negative sign, right? So I have negative 4 plus 7, so that's negative 4 plus 7 from here and here, right? So we're adding a negative and positive number together. So we have to subtract the greater absolute value. We're going to subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater absolute value. So think of it this way is whichever one has the greatest absolute value, and then subtract from that the other number. So 7 minus 3, or 7 minus 4 is 3, getting ahead of myself. And the one with the greatest absolute value, which is a 7, is positive, so our answer is positive. So it's going to be plus 3. Negative 12v plus 3. Our final two problems here. And this one here, it is subtraction again, so I've kind of intentionally selected this one here so we could have some more practice with that. So we're going to take what's in here, 9a plus 7, and then think of this as we can either first say, okay, the opposite of everything inside. So let's change the negative 3a to plus 3a. And the negative 1, well, this is a plus negative 1, right? So negative 1 to positive 1, so plus positive 1. And let me erase it there so I can see. Yep, opposite. Good. Had to make sure I was doing that correctly. Or another way is to realize that we could put a 1 in front of it, change it to a plus, throw a negative in front of the negative 1, and then we end up with negative times negative is positive. 1 times 3 is 3. The a goes along for the ride, so we still have 3a there. That's good to go. And then a negative, and let's change that over to plus and negative. And negative times negative is positive. 1 times 1 is 1, so we end up there. So either way, either putting a 1 in front, changing it over to a negative 1, and then distribute it in, or if you want to think of it, most of you are probably going to think, oh, it's a lot easier to do that whole, just take the opposite of everything that's inside the parentheses. So let's go ahead and continue. So let's deal with the terms of a. So I have 9 a's and 3 a's. They're both positive. That's why I like to kind of keep everything as plus signs, right? Notice I like to keep everything in addition. So 9 plus 3 is 12, so I get 12a, and 7 and 1 is 8, so plus 8. 12a plus 8. And on our last one here, well, notice that we have 6 plus 5 times the quantity of 8 plus 10c minus c. This right here has to be dealt with first because we have to distribute the 5 into the quantity of 8 plus 10c. So let's go ahead and take our 6, bring it down, and 5 times 8 is 40, so plus 40, and 5 times 10 is 50, and the c goes along for the ride, so it's 50c. Now we can bring down the minus c. And at this step, I'm going to go ahead and change this sign here from subtraction to addition. I'm going to take the positive c and make it a negative c. And just so that we realize that there is a leading coefficient of 1 in front of it, we'll put the 1 there as well. So everything in terms of c, I've got 50 c's and a negative 1 c. So 50 plus negative 1 is these two here, and which is the same as 50 minus 1, so that's going to be 49. 49 what? 49c. And then I can put the 6 and the 40 together to get my 46. So 49c plus 46 is the simplified form of our expression that we started with. So those are all of my examples for IXL 8.B.16, add and subtract linear expressions. Good luck with your activity.